Unity of Houston is an inclusive church where we seek to understand and live the teachings of Jesus and other spiritual masters. At Unity, we welcome all people from all spiritual paths and every walk of life. We celebrate the diversity of our city and of our world, and we teach love, tolerance, and oneness, seeking to live in harmony with open minds and open hearts.
Wherever you are in your spiritual path, you are always welcome at Unity. Join us and discover that the life of your dreams is already within you.
Today is 11/11, an auspicious number, and I think of it, I've been thinking of it as we were singing, I am that I am. It's like, I am that I am that I am that I am. All those I's multiplied. Today is just the perfect time for us to explore our I am, to return home to that of us, which is the truth. So much of our national attention has gone outward in a big way lately with the election and the pandemic and what's going on outside and beyond us. So now the universe is calling us to turn once again inward to the I am. And Reverend Karen and I have chosen to start this new series tonight on Wayne Muller's book, How Then Shall We Live? It's a 4-part series, and each part of the series will have a question, and they're 4 simple questions for us to ask ourselves so that we can experience the beauty and the meaning in our lives as we take this human journey together on this planet. So how shall we live as the world changes around us? As we see profound shifts and changes, whether they're in leadership or in consciousness or what have you. When the outer world changes, we once again can see the opportunity to reflect, who am I? Who am I? It's a fundamental question. Many spiritual traditions and practices begin with this very question. It is necessary for individuals, just as necessary as it is for nations to know who they are, spiritual communities or businesses to identify and be clear. On our spiritual journey, we ask ourselves, am I spirit or am I flesh? Am I sacred or secular? Am I shaped by my past forever? Or do I have the opportunity to flex and grow and change and evolve and uncover a brighter path? Am I broken or am I whole? What is my true nature? As we explore our true nature, we can go to our master teachers. Jesus said, "You are the light of the world." That was his answer for us, his message for us. You're the light of the world. And what is that light? What does that look like? How do I experience that? Buddha said, "Be a lamp unto yourselves, be your own confidence. Hold to the truth within yourselves as the only truth." And so he also taught of our divine nature as the true nature, that we are filled with divine nature, but how do we find it? How do we know it, especially when we've known ourselves as roles we've played, experiences we've had, our past? When we looked for our true nature and we begin to look within, naturally, we begin to uncover the things we don't like about ourselves, our flaws, what in recovery is called character defects, our doubts of our own worthiness, our personality. And we can begin our spiritual journey with the intention to fix all those things. Well, if I could just fix these things about myself that are incomplete, imperfect, broken, then I can experience wholeness or become like a saint, which was something that I aspired to, especially growing up Catholic. I thought, well, that's the epitome of a spiritual person, is someone who's just perfect and never does anything wrong. walks on water too would be really great. So, and it can seem unattainable to aspire to that. This approach to fixing ourselves can make us feel like we're always a project to be worked on, a project, always seeing the flaws. It made me think about my engagement ring that I have. I have the certification, the diamond certification, when my husband, then fiance, when he proposed to me and he gave me all the paperwork, that this is not a perfect diamond. There are very few perfect diamonds, and they are very expensive. It's like less than 1% of diamonds are perfect. And so there are some very minor flaws in this diamond. And it's beautiful. The setting is quite incredible. It's a setting, it's not Tiffany, but is designed after Tiffany. So, you know, I take a lot of pride in this ring because you can see the light. When the light goes, it's set, the diamond is set up so that you can see the sparkle of the diamond from the sides and everything. And so it looks, to the naked eye, I think, pretty perfect. But if you're a jeweler and you're looking at it magnified, then you can see the minor imperfections. And I could spend my whole life or marriage or time thinking about, well, you know, he didn't get me a perfect diamond. It might look great, but it's got those, I know those flaws are there. I can't see them. I can just feel them in the ring, you know. That's the kind of thing we do to ourselves, right? No matter how our outer appearance might be or how we're even feeling, it's like, well, I know about those little flaws, even if no one else can see them, I can see them. We can tend to limit ourselves by our roles, by our appearance, by our age, gender, a diagnosis we can identify with and become that as our identity. Well, how did Jesus know who he was, our master teacher? I'm not convinced that he knew fully who he was in the beginning of his life, in the earlier years, that it was an unfoldment of that revelation of all that he was throughout his lifetime that we get to experience when we study the Gospels. Jesus went to John the Baptist, a prophet who's preaching in the wilderness, to be baptized. And when John baptized Jesus, the heavens opened, is what Scripture tells us. The heavens opened, and the Spirit of God descended upon him like a dove and alighted on Jesus. And a voice from heaven said, "This is my Son, with whom I am well pleased." And so Scripture tells us that this is really the time where his ministry was ignited, where his journey began in this higher awareness of who he was. But it took his whole life to really fully unfold that true identity. After his baptism, he was led out into the wilderness to prove himself, to himself and to God, that he knew this truth that had been revealed to him, that now he's living it. He's claimed it. It is his own, and he's not being swayed by it. And so we know he goes out into the wilderness, and he's there for 40 days and 40 nights. And he's visited by Satan, or this temptation that comes to him to bargain away his spiritual power with worldly things and worldly powers, because the time is now, and why not be king and have all the riches and all the power and all the glory in this world? And so I imagine it must have been very tempting, considering he was fasting, to be tempted with bread and riches and all this out in the wilderness. So he refuses Satan 3 times, Scripture tells us, and then Satan goes away and angels come to minister to him. And so you see in this story his steadfast allegiance to the truth that he knew within him, that he is a child of God, and that's his true identity, and of course, in the favor of God. And so he stood up, in standing up to Satan, he deepened his certainty of who he was. And so, can you imagine living in that kind of certainty where you know the truth, right? The truth is revealed to you of who you are. Maybe you find it in your spiritual studies or in some awakening moment of awareness of something that comes to you. But it's that opportunity to live it and to live your faith where it may be questioned, it may be tempted. It's like, oh, you think that you're this now. You think that you're divine. You think that you are I am that I am. You're the Christ consciousness. Well, then why can't you manifest, who knows, be the president or a mansion or a yacht or, I don't know, a building. whatever it happens to be that feels like, well, if I have this power, I should be able to create some worldly thing. And that's that opportunity to come back again and again to that faith, that inner faith and reliance of who am I, whose am I, and the truth of who we are, and living in that certainty without saying, well, if I have this power that I am, I should be able to rule the world in whatever way that your mind creates that fantasy of what this divine power should be able to do in the world, that who you are is already enough, that there's not a manifestation that is needed to prove that truth in your life. To knowing that. And that's what Jesus demonstrated for us, that he didn't have to do a demonstration to know the fullness of the truth of who he is. And so another master teacher, Buddha, he also had an awakening story like Jesus on his path of uncovering who am I. He was a prince. He was young Siddhartha. He was raised in a palace. And he was kept away from worldly awareness, really. They didn't want him to see sickness or aging or suffering. He lived a very privileged life. Well, as he grew older, he became exposed to these things. And he realized that they were inevitable: old age, death, illness. And so he took up some very austere ascetic practices of meditation and fasting and being away from people in order to cleanse his mind and body of these limited ideas, is what he saw it of old age and death and all that, just to be able to know only the truth. And he recognized that he was suffering in doing this. He was causing himself to suffer, which is exactly what he wanted to be free of. And it brought him weakness, it brought him more suffering. So his mind took him back in his most painful moment of this practice, which was pretty severe, to his very first meditation. When Siddhartha first meditated, he was 9 years old, and he was sitting under a rose apple tree, and he just experienced calm and clarity, peace. And he recognized that that was really what he truly wanted, and that was what was going to bring him forward on his spiritual path, not these extreme practices. And so he decided that he was going to seek what he called the middle way, or the middle path, to cultivate a mindful attention, a mindful awareness of his experience. And so he sat under a tree and he decided to meditate just like he did when he was 9, until all was revealed to him. He just allowed that to unfold in its own timing. And it said that in the story, as Wayne Muller tells it, that as the morning star arose, that it was revealed to him the nature of all things, joy and sorrow, death and birth, and he saw his true nature that was free of all ignorance, of all illusion. And it was in that moment when he became free that Siddhartha became the Buddha, and Buddha simply means the one who is awake. He awakened to the truth without having to ignore the truth or be in a world where he pretended it didn't exist or was separated from it. He was in the world, but not of the world, as we say on our spiritual path. And so it is our recognition of our true identity that we are on the journey of, and it may not be as dramatic as Jesus and Siddhartha, but is no less meaningful or sacred of an experience as it unfolds for us. And so we may, in our journey, call ourselves mother, father, sister, brother, teacher, student, Democrat or Republican, or independent. However we choose to name ourselves, that name, that identity that we choose, it will set the course of our life, of what we choose to do with our lives, how we choose to express, how we choose to love, to live, and how we give our gifts on this planet while we're here. And so if we're unsure of who we are, if we're kind of just floating through life, we can be tentative. We'll live tentatively. We won't live on purpose. We'll live in kind of this nebulous way. When we have a strong sense of our true nature, of who we are, of our inner guidance, that voice within us that leads us, then we can live more boldly and more in alignment with that truth. And as Jesus did, to know, he knew that he knew that he knew who he was beyond the questioning or temptation of a power outside of himself. So how do we name ourselves? There's this wonderful story that's shared in this text, and it's a story from Jack Kornfield, who is a spiritual teacher of Buddhism. He brought the teachings of insight meditation into the West. And he tells this story of a tribe in Africa who had this amazing tradition, so beautiful. I love the story, that they count the birth date of a child not from the day that they were born or the day that they were conceived, but from the moment that the child was a thought in its mother's mind. How they determine that, I'm amazed. But this is the story, and it's based on a true story. Or a true tribe in Africa. And so when a woman wants to have a child, what she does is she goes away and she sits under a tree and she meditates and she just opens up to hear what that child's song is. She listens for the song, and when she can identify a tune, she knows that the child is ready to come to her. And so she will get together with the man who would be the father of the child, and as they're conceiving the child, she'll teach him the song, and they'll sing parts of the song. This is so beautiful, to welcome the child. And as the woman is pregnant with the child, she teaches the song to the midwives and the older women in the village, so that when the child is being born, the child's song is sung to the child. And all the important moments of the child's life, the people in the village get to learn each other's songs. So they learn the child's song, and if the child falls and scrapes his knee, someone will come and sing the child's song to help the child remember who they are. Or if during a wonderful event, perhaps like they're going through a ritual of coming of age or a marriage, that they sing the song. In a marriage, there are two songs together, the two people who are being married, their songs are sung together. And then finally, at the end of the person's life, when they're on their deathbed, and the entire village knows their song by then, that they will sing their song to them as they leave their body and leave this human experience. And so there is that truth of us. This is what this story expresses, the truth of us that preceded our birth, that truth that we tapped into our meditation tonight, that of us that is a song, a melody, a light, harmony that comes forward into a human experience and takes shape and form. So when you ask yourself, who am I? Who am I? How do you respond? When we respond in things that who we are, roles we play, we can have different feelings around that. Some of the roles that I have played or ways that I see myself, I'm a child of divorce. I say that and I can feel sad about that. I can feel disheartened or even brave to have come through that. When I say I'm a mother, I could feel protective, loving, sometimes overwhelmed. A minister, it can be peaceful. It can be generous and open, and sometimes grandiose and larger than life in its experience at times. And I get to do things like this with you all. But can you go even deeper with the question? Even deeper beyond the roles and all the meaning that we put around that, even deeper. And so our spiritual practice to do that is to go into meditation. Meditation takes us to that deep inner experience beyond the personality, beyond the roles, beyond the current scenarios, to that of us that is fluid and changeable and adaptable. When I came to Unity after having been a professional performer and actor, and my path to Unity came at a time when I was asking myself, who am I? Because I had played so many different roles in my career, and I recognized that I could be a tap dancing chorus girl or a detective, or I could be a teacher or whatever. I could play all these different roles and, convincingly, I guess it's up to interpretation, but, fairly convincingly in these roles that, well, if I'm that and that and that and all these different things convincingly, that's not really parts that I'm playing. If those are all different roles that I'm playing, they're not me, then who am I? Who am I? And I just went on this voracious search of who I was beyond what I looked like or acted like or roles I played. I don't know how well this is going to work in this space, but I brought this. It is a card that I created in Soul Collage this week in our Unity Soul Collage group. And it's a card that represents my soul essence. And I love the Soul Collage process because I never know, I might have an intention, but once I start collecting images and putting things together, sometimes there are things that I would never expect, like this being my soul essence, and it's a picture of a jellyfish and a submarine. But as I looked at the jellyfish, I love the way that it expands and contracts and floats in its environment of the ocean. And sure, sometimes it stings, maybe I'm a little edgy sometimes. But what I really liked about it also is that there's this hole or this space, it's like there's an infinite infinity in this photo of this cavity where there's this connection of source, that these tentacles are kind of an outpouring of expression and all the different roles and aspects of who I am. And then the submarine was the light that shines through into my experience. So I just wanted to share that with you for fun of that process of just exploring my own soul expression of that of me that expands and contracts. You know, the earth does that too. The earth expands and contracts with its seasons. Winters can be contractive, and spring as we expand, summer, fall, and then expanding, contracting. We're always changing. Nothing is solid. There is so much more to each of us that wants to be known, that wants to be revealed. So I invite you this week, as you bring this practice into your spiritual life, to keep asking yourself, who am I? Who am I? And to go deeper and deeper until you come into the realization of the truth of who you are. Namaste.
Thank you for watching this message today. I'd like to invite you to join us in person here on campus at Unity of Houston for Sunday morning or Wednesday evening services. If you can't be with us here on our campus, you can still join us live on Facebook or on our website, unityhouston.org, Sunday mornings at 11 a.m. Central.